Uh, I work at SASNet, and for those of you, we have Lars here, but I don't know if I need to introduce SASNet, but still, if for those of you who don't know what SASNet is, we are Sweden's one and only South Asian research network, and soon to be a research organization by 2020. And today we have with us, we're so honored to have with us Dr. Ashok Swain, and I need to get this very right because he's a professor of Peace and Conflict Research and the UNESCO Chair of Water Cooperation and the Director of Research School of International Water Cooperation at Uppsala University. So much, we're so proud of you. And today's talk is on climate change and river disputes in South Asia. And I won't talk much, so without further ado, I would welcome Professor Swain to have a talk on this. And after this, we'll have a short 15 minutes, 20 minutes of interaction, like question-answer session or sharing experiences, whatnot. Good? Great.
Thank you. Thank you, Shami. Thank you for inviting. I think it'd be good, I mean, we are a smaller group, and if you want me to stop sometimes and, if the...
Sorry, yes.
Yeah. If I'm not completely understood or I'm going faster, you just stop me and then I can explain a little bit more. My idea is to look at, to tell you about a little bit about the water management, how the water, international river, or particularly water sharing has become an issue. How globally it has been looked at, what are the policy changes have taken place or is planned to be taking place. But then I will move to South Asia and showing how the usual water management strategy has been challenged by climate change and also strategic relations, changing strategic relationship in that region. And then, what are the possible way outs? In South Asia, I will try confine myself to the three major river basins, or if you ask an Indian, they will say probably two. It's a Ganges, Brahmaputra river basins, which are possibly, I think it should be two basins, and Indus basin. That's between India and Pakistan, mostly. But then I will, I will not get into the internal river basins, but of course, if there is any particular area you want me to, or if you can have a discussions, if you want to discuss with the internal river basins, I will come back to that. Because there are lots of conflicts also goes on internal river basins between different provinces and between different groups. It's not easy to talk about water issue, water scarcity issue in this part of the world. It's either raining or snowing all the time, isn't it? In this particularly, I come from Uppsala. It's a bit more raining and a bit more snowing probably than here. But the water issue has become a significant and serious issue all over the world. It's just a quick look at it. We have also always tried to see that, look, it's a population and the water are quite related depending on how many people we have. Probably that is the water scarcity is leading that way. But if you look at it, when the world's population tripled in the 20th century, it means it went from the 2 billion to 6 billion. The use of renewable water resources has gone sixfold. So we have probably got more people, but also more people are using much more water than what they used to do before. So that's quite a significant change which has taken place, because we are not only more people, but we have become much more water user as well than before. Still 780 million people live without clean drinking water in spite of one set of MDG gone, another set of SDG has come, but the 780 million people live without clean drinking water. And 2.5 billion lacks adequate sanitation. And drinking water and sanitations, these are the two human rights issues. It's a part of the human rights. So if you are looking for the human rights violations, you can see 2.5 billion do not have the possibility for the adequate sanitation. So 1 million die every year from water-related diseases. Every 90 seconds, a child dies from water-related diseases. It's a huge number. But I give this number of deaths because I come from a department, we are quite fair, Department of Peace and Conflict Research. We are always we are famous for counting number of deaths in the war. Okay, that's what our way of being famed, or what you call but so unless I tell this that how many people die because of the water issues, I need to put myself in that situation that when they are looking at it's also a serious security issue. But look, this is the interesting, the last one. How much of water do you think we need every day for the personal use? For taking a bath, drinking water, cooking food, and if you have a dog or cat. Don't include your cows in it, only the house pet. How much of water we need?
12 liters.
You don't take showers? You have to take showers as well. So it's a 35 to 50 liters. It depends on the how. WHO has the 35 to 50 liters because shower is included, sanitation is also included. Look at the figure here. Americans use 575 liters per day on the personal use, while Norway 350. Don't get me into the Norway, Denmark, Sweden conflict, okay? Denmark and Sweden, I think 180, which are probably Norway's locations, which makes it different. In India, 130 liters, to be compared to India, Bangladesh, 45 liters. It's a huge difference. And if you go to Africa, African countries, which Africa is very water-rich country, continent, particularly the southern Africa, the eastern and western part of Africa. There are Eastern African countries and Western African countries, even you will find 10 to 15 liters. So it's not exactly water scarcity per se, that the countries don't have water. Even if they do have the water, neither the governments or institutions are not good enough, nor they do have money, or they don't have the technology to take that water to the people. Okay, so you might have the water in the lake, you might have water in the rivers, but the water is not reaching to the people. So if you calculate the per capita availability of water of the country and the per capita water use, you will see a huge difference also. So I think this is where the challenge comes in. So it's not the physical scarcity of water, it's also economic scarcity of water. The focus would be, of course the water is everywhere, but there is a 286 international rivers. This number keeps changing, okay? So you think that the international rivers, when I started studying, it was 214. Because 1978, UN brought out a register called 214 rivers. But now it has gone up to 286. Of course, some countries become more, some countries become Russia, Soviet Union collapsed, but some countries became together, like West Germany, East Germany became together. So there are few things which are going on. But also because of new technology, satellite imagery, we are looking at before which we are thinking that not international rivers, particularly we are finding in this part of the world, Scandinavia, they were not considered international rivers, but now they are being considered as international rivers. So 286 international rivers. But those rivers supply water more than 40% of the population. It's a huge number. And I think we need to realize why this is important. Because if the water flowing into a river and the country which is the upstream, which is in the upstream, has the control of that water. Imagine countries like Tajikistan. Do you know that a country? That country may be a small country, but it's just 96% of its water doesn't originate in that country. It comes from outside in the river system and from the other country upstream. Country like Egypt, 95%. It's a huge amount of water. If you look at it, even here, Hungary or Netherlands almost 79 to 80% of water coming from the upstream. Upstream means other countries. So when these countries are so highly dependent on the water, which, water is not that, you have a choice to whether to use it or not. You have to, because that's a matter of survival. So if that water is not with you or in your control or is territorial control or a national control, that water is at the mercy of your upstream countries. If they can give you this water, that makes it, for countries to feel insecure about, to feel really are we really able to survive if something happens in the upstream? So what happened in the post-Cold War, there was lots of debates on this resource conflict, because when Soviet Union collapsed, when I was doing my Ph.D. in the 80s, we were talking more about the nuclear war, how Soviet Union will kill the part of this side, or this side will kill part of other side. That was more of this Cold War politics. But when the Cold War started getting after Gorbachev came in power, Soviet Union collapsed, and then we started talking about again resource conflict. This is, of course, resource conflict was mostly about the oil resource had also come in the 1970s. So I'm talking about the non-renewable natural resources conflict. Because oil minerals have been part of the conflict before. It's about the land, it's about the water, it's about the forest. So water became a major source. Tons of paper were published. I wrote my first paper in '93, water conflict, and so there have been quite a lot of water conflict paper has gone in for the past 25 years. The politicians started talking about the water war then. Media made a big issue. International agency, UN Secretary General start onwards. Everybody was talking, particularly at that time, Boutros Ghali was in the forefront of talking about he was from Egypt, so there was a lot of discussions about the water war. But no war took place on water that time. Though there is all these water researchers that time, they were focusing on, particularly the major one was the Nile, that the war will take place on the Nile. Even in the 1980s, CIA brought out a list of 10 places where the water war will take place. And most of them in the Middle East, North Africa. Most of them, 10 places. It's a 1980 CIA list. But no water war took place. In the 1990s, we saw several river agreements being signed instead. And that's where the debate started. How long do you want me to speak?
Up to 12.
Up to 12, okay. So you guys are, you can move out 12 o'clock, so that's fine. So why no war took place? I have some kind of, because when this kind of discussions was going on, we tried to figure out what exactly is going, why the countries are not fighting wars on the water. But of course there is a difference then. Whoever is saying that there is no war over water, is there any particular region we can have found that on this particular region countries go to the war? Take for example, in the recent wars, if we say why United States in 2003 went to Iraq. if I ask you these questions, 10 people here will give me 10 answers, isn't it? There is an official reason. There is a reason given by non-officially officials. There is a reason by the researchers. Different type of researchers will give for different reasons. There is never a but there is maybe an immediate reason. If something, somebody got killed or there has been certain kind of instances which really pushes the conflict reaching to that war level. But there are a group of reasons which are always behind this country taking a decision to wage a war against another. It's not ever a single reason. So how do on earth we come into conclusion, of course, the war hasn't taken place on water. But even if it is not a declared war on water issue, and I think we found in the 90s that World Bank refused to fund controversial dams on shared rivers. You remember Soviet Union collapsed in the late 80s. And then before, if World Bank didn't pay money or Americans and Germans didn't pay money, the Soviets used to pay money for the build the dams. We have seen that everywhere, particularly in Nile, it came up. But when the Soviet Union collapsed, there was not this Soviet side didn't have anybody to pay the money for. So all these countries those who had the plan, like Ethiopia, countries those who had plan, like Turkey got it done. But I think there have been several countries in Africa, Middle East, Asia. They couldn't really build the dams because we could have restrictions, because we said no, because this is the way it should be managed. So they didn't have an alternative source of funding. Then when you build the dam is not built in one day. Dam building, even China takes 5 years. The other countries take 10 to 20, so if that long a dam building takes place, and you don't build the dam on, hiding it behind a house. The dam is everyone, at least downstream countries come to know about it when you start building a dam. So it gives 5 to 10 years. Either the countries try to find out how to deal with it, how to make a negotiated settlement, how to find an alternative arrangement if that kind of the water will go away, how much of water will be diverted, if the water, and many of the dams also being built for hydropower generation. If hydropower generation is taking place, the water is not going out of the system because it's time, how you manage the time, you can build probably another dam, put the water there. So there are different sources. Like take for example, when the Turkey started building the dams in the Upper Euphrates and Tigris. That is the time when, there is a lots of apprehension. Of course, a lot of water scarcity took place in Syria and Iraq. But then take time period. It takes 15 to 20 years for these countries to, of course, lots of threat came in that we will fight wars, but all these things, but it really didn't lead to wars. Then the third thing is, if you fight war, because we are trying to see that how water has been used or not used, besides few cases in recent months or recent years, ISIS using water in the, as part of directly conflict weapon. But when the two countries, ISIS is not exactly a country of the regular way, you just don't really look at it. But if it's a country like wants to fight on the water, it's very easy to fight your war on the top of the mountains, like Indians and Pakistanis are fighting a war on Siachen Glacier, when, it's not exactly something to fight for, but there is a fight going on. But if India and Pakistan started waging a war on the Indus, if India, I will come back to it, but if India really tries to destroy a dam in Pakistan, Pakistan will also immediately destroy another dam in India, or two. The dams are not, again you cannot keep it hiding. You see the issue, so that it's and once the dams, you expose your dams or you give that kind of legitimacy for your opponents, your dams to be targeted, and your dams get damaged, it doesn't take overnight to recover. It takes another 10, 15 years to build another dam, and it's a huge cost involved. And I think that's what even if we have gone mad globally, I'm talking about but we have not gone that mad not to take into account of getting the dams into the war, direct attack or target in the war, because it has a huge repercussions, particularly for you, because you legitimize your opponents that your dams are exposed. So I think this is that's why many the war hasn't taken place. That's my view. The 1990s saw several important river agreements. River agreements, particularly in the Middle East, Jordan River, Israel and Jordan, on the Jordan River, the peace agreement took that one. We had a 95 an agreement in the Mekong, lower Mekong basin. Of course, China is not part of it, but China and Burma, but the other 4 countries, they made an agreement. 96, India, Bangladesh had an agreement on the Ganges. 99, Nile Basin Initiative, where all the 9 Nile Basin countries, except that time Eritrea, they came together having a Nile Basin Initiative. The Nile was actually considered one of them, but the Nile Basin Initiative, of course, it has not really reached a formal agreement yet because there is other problems, but at least Nile Basin Initiative is signed. So what happened by late 90s, we started talking of water peace. In the early 90s, we started talking about water war, every country will go into that. Then in few years, we changed our view and we said, oh, no, there is no water war taking place, this will be water peace. The rivers will be considered as a peace. Rivers have created the different civilization in the past. Rivers are so rivers are now will be the peace rather than the conflict. I think this is where we had a problem. Problem means agreements, cooperation, peace. These are 3 different things. If you are a peace researcher, you know very well, but if you are not, it's very simple. If you sign an agreement, it doesn't mean that you are cooperating. You can also sign an agreement not to cooperate. Isn't it? I give an example. When people decide to divorce, it's an agreement. Whether it leads to cooperation, probably not. Whether it leads to peace, maybe not. So, but most of the cases, we saw that the countries have signed agreements how to divide the water, will lead to cooperation and will lead to peace. This is somehow overstretching these kind of definitions. So why this idea came in, that we started talking about making peace through water cooperation. Water cooperation will lead to peace. Water is critical for survival and it will force the rival states to cooperate. That's the idea theoretically we started developing, because water is so important that people cannot resist but they will cooperate. Once you start cooperating, then it will help them to cooperate on other issues, because once you start working together, you start building trust, but then you will work together. It will build a mutual trust. It will create an environment where you will consider war is not an option. But research, this research was again in the 90s we started doing it. We means quite a lot of researchers. There was a book came out in the 2002 talking about how that will lead to this kind of cooperation, water cooperation or environmental cooperation will lead to peace. We call it environmental peacemaking. But no one asked why in some cases water cooperation leads to other form of cooperation, why not in others? Let me give you, because when coming back to South Asia, when we were talking about South Asia, look, India, Pakistan, these cases I will come back in the latter part, but India, Pakistan signed an agreement in 1960 on the Indus River. But after signing this agreement, they still continue to cooperate on the Indus River Agreement. They fought a war in 1965. They fought a war in 1971. They fought a semi-war in 1999. They keep fighting war all the time, while they are also cooperating at the Indus Basin. Or agreement, cooperation means agreement, okay? They have signed an agreement there. Whereas India, Bangladesh signed an agreement in 96 on Ganges Basin. That was my postdoc research, India-Bangladesh agreement. I was in Bangladesh working from the early 90s to 95, 96. If somebody has been to Bangladesh before 96, you will hear that the country's whole problem, particularly in the 93, 92, 92, 96, the only problem of this country is the Ganges water. Because there was I will come back, the Farakka barrage was the only problem this country has. You mention anything, the health problem, you mention the economic problem, you mention the water problem, you mention the agricultural problem, you mention deforestation problem, fishing problem, you wouldn't mention whatever, there will be an angle to the Farakka water diversion. They signed an agreement in 96 for 30 years. And after that, very rarely you hear that that was an agreement. How on earth, because it's a 40,000 cusecs of water India could divert, but then they decided to divert 25,000 cusecs. Probably that's cubic feet per second. That's water. It's a very small amount of water. How come that water could be so much a big problem for 130, 140, at that time 120 million people, and the problem got immediately solved. After that, both countries signed a number of agreements on other issues. So we have never really asked this question: why water becomes such an important issue? And if they sign the agreement, why did it lead to other countries to cooperate, like in India, Bangladesh cooperate in other areas? Whereas in Pakistan, where they have an agreement for so long, but still it hasn't really helped to cooperate in other areas. There is another thing which I think, because I'm trying to generalize a little bit before going to the case study, because I know many of you are not in the South Asia guys, but I will come back to South Asia. Yeah, don't worry, South Asia will be there. What happened before exploring the pathways of peacemaking of shared water resources? We took a long jump to peace building. You must have heard this quite a lot these days, water and peace building, isn't it? People talking about the peace building everywhere, and then environmental peace building, the water peace and peace building. What is that? This is, of course, some things which the funding agencies do like, international community likes. Peace building issues, isn't it? Because that's where we are putting, of course, you can call it a state building, or we have our own image of how to build a country in the post-conflict, or the post-conflict is a bad word, maybe fragile countries or the conflict-affected countries, we try to enter into this and then try to build peace. And we are talking that we will build the peace through water, and so we call it water peace building. They keep forgetting the water peace building, which we talk about, is actually an internal water business, isn't it? Because we try to create a certain kind of small hydropower project or certain irrigation project. We try to bring together some people, but those are all internal systems. But then we expect there will be a regional cooperation coming behalf of all of it. All these international communities, those who are engaged in this part of those Asia and Africa and the Middle East, do have an ambition of transforming water peace building to water regional cooperation or peacemaking. It's a completely out of context expectations. And we as a researchers have been asked to find the ways out for it. How could you do it? I'm not saying that the water peace building is a bad thing. I'm saying it's extremely important that international communities should engage in the water issues, should try to put resources supporting water issues, supplying energy, hydropower, absolutely important, providing clean water, sanitation, these are the issues needs to be taken care of. But by doing that, don't expect that the countries will cooperate as a regional cooperation or regional peace will come in. Why you want to do it? Why you want to say this? Because it sounds very nice, isn't it? Because it makes it a big story. But the story never really doesn't have that kind of connections. And we all have to be putting this. I mean, look, I'm now advising to one international agency, Salween River and Ganges Brahmaputra, another international agency, Indus River and Amudarya Sevdarya, the Aral Sea Basin. And when you do that, all the time they will come and say that, tell us how to, we know these things, okay, we know that you know these things. So then what is the problem? No, tell us how this Peacebuilding can get into regional cooperation. I said, that's not possible. And why that will not possible, I'll come back in the end. But this is some things which you are expecting too much with this kind of activities. But for us, if you are a consultant or you are a researcher, you are dependent on this kind of international community money, you have to make a story out of it. Because otherwise you won't get the research money. But it is absolutely not exactly this kind of things is not going to move. So of course it will help the human security issues, but human security issues, by doing that we will get a regional peace. It's not the connection. I mean, it might lead, but doesn't necessarily will lead. And why it will not necessarily lead, we need to realize this later on. To conclude this, the introductory sections of this one, it's a long one. Of course, there is no war yet, because we have seen this international rivers. They have caused tension between riparian nations. We have seen the tensions between Egypt, Ethiopia, Sudan. Lots of tension. We have seen the tension between Turkey, Iraq, Syria, threat of war. We have seen the even, is anyone from Palestine and Israel? No, I can't say. No, why? Because if you bring in this water war and the Jordan River Basin and you mention this, that the 1967 war was partly probably because of the water in the, the whole discussions goes into that direction. So I didn't want to get into that directions moving in the 1967 war when they were doing in the upstreams, some of the dam projects were at the time when there was an Israeli attack. So, but then we saw that, of course, there have been a lot of threats, but it has never led to a particular war. And we have also seen agreements work. There have been many agreements which have been under serious threat. I remember there was an agreement, the Indus agreement. As per the Indus agreement between India and Pakistan, the Indus Commission means the commission members, the secretaries from the India and from the Pakistan, they have to meet at least once in every economic year, the financial year. If they don't meet once, then the agreement is not valid, or the agreement will get into trouble. There was a 2001. There was a terror attack on Indian Parliament, which Parliament was almost, they could have wiped out quite a lot of politicians that day. But it was not that severe, but the attack was a big attack on the terror. Then Indian government put 500,000 forces on the Pakistani border. 500,000, okay, 500,000 well, there was a war-like situation. India-Pakistan's traffics were cancelled. I remember there was a meeting which was going on in the UN University in Tokyo in 2002. That was, I think, in the beginning, first half of May or April. That is the time, that is the last month of that financial year when the Indian representative and Pakistani representative have to meet either in India or in Pakistan. That time the meeting has to be in the Indian side because every year they keep changing. How the Pakistani in charge will come to India because there is no flight. So it was so everybody was tense whether the India will allow to meeting to take place, whether the Pakistan representative will able to come. Thank God in the last moment they got the good sense. So the Pakistani officials went to Dubai, flew from Dubai to Delhi and hold the meeting. And the agreement lasted. So what we have seen, many of these agreements where we have been seeing these kind of threats that the agreements will come, but they have lasted. There have been a number of internal violent conflicts have taken place. A number of internal violent conflicts over water supply. We'll see a large number of violent conflicts in Latin America. We'll see this kind of urban-rural conflicts going on. In Africa, we have seen different provinces having violent conflicts over the water resources. It has, of course, led to the internal instability. But the real threat has been, because of the water scarcity, is affecting agriculture, it's affecting economic development, and the particular threat to human security. It's food supply, health, and also contributing to the migration. But migration doesn't mean that the international migration, people landing up in this part of the world. Migration, lots of internal migration as well taking place. So I think even if the war hasn't taken place over the water resources, it still has become extremely complicated for the overall security scenario, particularly the areas of the countries or the basins that were affected. This is the report, yesterday's report. We have only 12 years limit to climate change catastrophe. This is the Arctic snow. I will move now to South Asia, particularly the Himalayan glaciers. Is the most important one I would consider because of the, even if nothing, it's is the providing water to a large number of people, particularly in the South Asia, 700 million people. And if you take that number to count that number to China and the Southeast Asia, it will be humongous. How much of water, how much of that people dependent on the water which is originating from the Himalayas. If you look at the climate change in the Himalayas, mountain glacier change in the different parts of the world, but to look at the, it's a huge one taking place in the Himalayan basin. What is this melting gas glaciers are doing? They are retreating 10 to 60 meters per year, all these glaciers. Many small glaciers have already disappeared. And 67% glaciers are retreated in the past decade. So it's a huge number. Besides the glaciers melting, we are also looking at the, of course, glacier melting, look, is contributing, because if I may forget or something, it's just to add to this, it has positive and negative impacts. Negative is very long term, negative is always, but the positive can be short term. I'll tell you one anecdote. I was mentioning that I was in Bangladesh doing my postdoctoral research for several years. When they signed the agreement in '96, in December they signed, December 6th. In May, where the dry season starts, all these Himalayan rivers have a dry season period. The dry season period, that's dry season, so just at the height of the dry season. It's when it comes, particularly when the snow started snowing and snow starts to becoming, stay there, doesn't melt, and so before real snow melt starts in the June. So I think this April, May is the high period of the dry season, and that's also the time when the people in the countries in the basins need water. Anyway, so when in April, May 1997, after just a few months after the agreement was signed, to check out whether the Indians are, it's a Bangladesh invitation, so we went there to check whether Indians are respecting the commitment of what they have. Unfortunately, though they signed an agreement, 96 agreement India, Bangladesh signed. Maybe I should bring it up now. What happened? These countries were fighting. There was a change of the leadership in India and Bangladesh, most importantly in Bangladesh. Sheikh Hasina, who is the Prime Minister now, she became the Prime Minister in 96. Sheikh Hasina, the Bangladesh politics is, Bangladesh, one party or main party is the party in power now, pro-India, the other party is pro-China, pro-Pakistan, pro-Islamist. I think is a bit of confusion there. But this party, which was supposed to be pro-Indian, she came to power that time. So they have to sign the agreement. How to sign the agreement? Because what has happened, there is a particular place in the barrage where there's some, India takes some water and Bangladesh has to, rest of the water, the real mainstream has to go to Bangladesh, but India diverts just a few kilometers getting into Indian side, Bangladesh side. But after water is being decreasing from upside, they have been signing agreement, they first signed agreement in 1975, they signed an agreement in 1983, they signed another agreement in 1985, but then the water is getting reducing because of upstream countries, upstream states in India, they are taking the water. So how to sign an agreement where Indian leadership will tell to their people that we have got our water, whereas the Bangladesh leadership can come because she just won the election, she has to also have the legitimacy to say that she has got the water which was given before, more water than before. There is not that water there. Where the water will come, where Bangladeshi Prime Minister can claim that she has got more water and Indian Prime Minister can claim that he has got more water. Can anyone tell me how this can happen? I call it South Asian ingenuity. You won't be able to know. Let me tell you how this can happen. What they did, like any other person, you will calculate how much of water available when you are calculating the water from when you are signing agreement in 96. You will last 5 years or 10 years how much of water is available at that point of time or place where the water is being divided. You know what they did? They got an average from 1947 to 1988. 1947, 1986. Why? Because that gives much larger figure. Okay, because if you take an average, on average you have more water than actually the water is there. So you didn't really calculate the water when it was getting less and less. And on that basis they signed the agreement. In 97, of course the water is not there. I mean, even Indians want to sign the water, the water is not there because they have already signed the agreement on the basis of an imaginary figure. So we were really, of course, there was been the Bangladeshi Prime Minister or Bangladeshi government had a very strict instructions. The water officials, those who were very friendly to me, they have been always talking to me before because there was a previous government, okay? So they are always complaining about the India taking away the water. When I went in the 97 with a group of researchers from UK mostly, when we asked them, they were completely silent. They said, we cannot say anything now because the government has stopped them to tell anything. Then we were thinking probably this agreement will not last. What has happened in the latter years, there is now not that less water. It's a probable, at that particular time, the water availability has increased. Why that water availability has increased? Because there is more glacier being melted. Because that is the time when the glacier melts takes place, where this dry season, high dry season. So we are seeing the more glacier melting that time. So that has able to keep this agreement working. As I said, in short term, it might work. In the long term, it is not the answer. Because then we will be probably, these rivers will be only seasonal rivers. Because these rivers are supposed to be perennial rivers, which the water is supposed to be flow all the time. And these are the lifelines of these countries. Then growing glacial lakes. Lots of lakes have come in. Of course, these lakes have a lot of, these lakes have been traditional for the Hindu religions, a lot of values up there, these lakes. Lord Shiva used to be in the Himalayas, so there is the lakes had a lot of, or at least religious, but I think these glacier lakes have increased much more than what the religion can take it anymore. So it's a much larger now because, and there is a lot of GLOF, we call it, the glacial lake outburst fault has taken place. Nearly 30 GLOF events have affected Nepal territory in the past. 200 potential dangerous glacial lakes across the Himalayan region. It's huge. Why it will be huge? Because if you look at this, what will happen? This will destroy the hydro projects, high plots and glacial lake outbursts. I must tell you this. Whenever the countries have signed the agreement, any agreement, international water agreements which have been signed in the last 50 years, all these agreements in this part of the world, Asia, Africa, and Middle East, okay? This is what we're talking about. Because this is the water scarcity. Water scarcity problem is different than the water quantity problem. This is all these agreements which have been signed in this part, always on the basis of getting more water. Means, when they sign the agreement, both parties, or usually two parties, they don't sign agreement to more than two parties in most of the cases, always expect that what the water availability now, because of signing agreements, they will build more dams, they will build more storages, and with that, they will increase the supply. On the increased supply, they will sign the agreement. You look at any agreement, it's always increased supply of the water. And increased supply of the water will take place because you need to build more dams to create more reservoirs. Without it, how come you can increase the supply in that sense? So, if this kind of glacial lake outbursts will take place, then we will have the destruction of hydro projects, high plots, and glacial lake outbursts. Problems in planning, how you plan these water development projects. Because how you take into account this kind of huge climate change induced disasters or natural disasters, which is not natural that much. How you take into account while you building or creating this kind of river planning. Of course, there is a doubt over the suitability to act as an international boundary. Because the more international boundaries in this area is also partly where the glaciers, because the glaciers have been marked as particularly India and China. In China issue, I will come in the end, because China needs special attention, okay? Because these borders, and I was talking about the Siachen, these are the glaciers mark quite a number of areas where India, Pakistan, or India, Nepal, or India, Bangladesh, particularly India, India, China, and India, Bhutan. Okay, India, Bhutan border is not that problematic. So in these cases, where glaciers are retreating, the borders have to be redefined. The countries like, in the Alps, the countries have redefined border. They re-signed the agreements, like Italy and Switzerland. They have to re-sign the agreements because of the glacier retreating. But hey, these countries are not Italy and Switzerland, okay? For them, the borders are extremely, we haven't reached, people sometimes say that, why post-Westphalian structure? They haven't reached the Westphalia yet. Forget about the post-Westphalian state structure. It will not reach that. It has not now. So that can be a huge problem, how the boundary will be issued. Boundary has been always an issue. It has led to a lot of conflict there. So, and that will be more problematic. And existing water sharing arrangements may come under threat due to decreased runoff and also change in the runoff pattern, particularly like agreements like Ganges Agreement, where both the countries have agreed to say that this point of time, this country will get this much of water and this country will be able to get that much of water. They will have a problem. Because, look, it's a global problem. All these river agreements, which are sharing river agreements, they have always given the time period, because most rivers and the demands of the water is different from time to time. So they have a different time period, how much of water will be given at a particular time, isn't it? Of course, all these river agreements do have certain provisions how to address a 1 or 2 bad years. Because every time, even before climate change became an issue, we have a good weather, bad weather issue. But that's only a couple of years or 2-3 years. But the climate changes poses a threat of a bad weather for 40 years altogether. Bad precipitation for 40 years altogether. All these agreements are not equipped enough to deal with this kind of long-term water availability variations in the system. So this will create a problem with the water agreements there as well. So there are different challenges which climate change will bring in. This is the Tibetan plateau of China. Look at the rivers. The 7 large rivers, Asian rivers, comes from that Tibetan plateau. I'm not going to discuss Yellow River or Sichuan Basin, not Mekong, not Salween. We will talk about still Ganges, Brahmaputra, and the Indus. Okay, and these are the 700 millions live in that basin. And if you include the India's plan and the Pakistani plan to some extent, probably the India's plan is to divert this water to south. Then will be probably India will take its 1.4 billion. Yeah, go ahead.
Why China name for the Brahmaputra is another name? I think the Bangladesh region is called Brahmaputra, but that river in Chinese region is...
It's Yarlung.
Yeah.
That's Chinese name?
It's the same?
Yeah. China has all the names different for them. As it's China can decide which names they want to. So it's China's name, Yarlung. But the Yarlung, you see, look, Yarlung is like Amudarya. You look at Amudarya or Sirdarya rivers, we always think about the 5 stans of Soviet Union stans. But they always forget there is an Afghanistan. So 50% of Amudarya flows through Afghanistan. They don't really realize this. Similarly, Brahmaputra, it's always India and Bangladesh. It's more than 50% flows through China. But China was not interested there. I will come back to this. China was not interested in Brahmaputra river before because it didn't need it. But now it is. We'll come back to that. But that's their name of the river. Okay. And China has this. China has the name of the Salween River. We call it Salween River. That's Han River in China. The Mekong one is the. Anyone knows? Lansang. So they have names which is the Chinese names. Let's move to Indus. Okay, this is an interesting case. Indus, of course, shared between India, China, Afghanistan, and Pakistan. Nepal is very little, something. You know, India and Pakistan love each other very well. And this is the river which has been the lifeline of these two countries. As you can see, though there are four, there is a Chinese control claimed by India, Indian control claimed by China. They didn't say here how much of Pakistani control claimed by India, how much Indian control Pakistan claimed by Pakistan. So there is always counter claims in that part of the world. That's the part which I will come to. Let me, before I go there, you see this is it's a six, I will first concentrate on India, Pakistan. It's a 6 river system, Indus system in the India-Pakistan basins. It's a three, the main of course Indus, Jhelum, Chenab, these are the western systems, Ravi, Bias, Satluj, these are the, you see these lines there, okay? So Ravi, Bias, Satluj, that flows quite south, that doesn't really go to the Kashmir side, because the south of Kashmir is flows. The Jhelum, Chenab, and Indus, they flow in the Kashmiri Valley, through Kashmir Valley. If you look at the colonial, before these countries became independent, the colonial administration had invested in agriculture, particularly agricultural development in this part of the world, quite a lot. Most of the agricultural areas were in the Pakistan side, which became Pakistan, of course, that time, or the agriculture. And the Indian side, there have been quite a number of projects which would maintain the water and stuff like that in the Indian, the south. So there is enough of water that time, there was not much. But what happened in 1947, India, Pakistan, the borders were signed, but they didn't know how to divide the water, or they had no agreement on the water. There have been a lot of conflict. Immediately 1948 it started. The water was being used by India to threaten Pakistan to accept certain kind of norms. And, so it became a serious issue from the very beginning. They signed few agreements, short-term agreement, but India was never respecting these agreements because India was in the upper hand. And immediately after they got into the Kashmir problems, and that Kashmir became a major issue. So the water was in the India's hand to some extent. To cut the story short, the World Bank got interested. It's a World Bank's president was that time saw a piece in a journal which his friend who was the Tennessee Valley Authority chief. He had come that time, he had seen this, and he wrote a report saying that, look, there's so much of water going unused to the river, but these two, but these two countries are fighting for. So that drew the attention of the World Bank. So World Bank became part of the system of the, or an agri party to this. So with the World Bank active persuasions, these two countries, in spite of their hostility towards each other, started talking over the water. It's a lot of discussions, number of years the discussion started. In 1960, they signed the agreement, Indus Water Agreement. Even this agreement is unique because it's not only India, Pakistan, World Bank is a co-signatory of it. So World Bank has been for the first time and last time a party to they wanted to do it in Nile, but that has not been successful agreement. But in the Indus. What happened in that agreement? As per that agreement, 3 east-flowing rivers, Ravi, Bias, Satluj, were given to India. It's a 55,000 kilometers. Whereas 35,000. Sorry, I'm just trying to look at it. But it's a smaller number. Whereas Indus, Jhelum, and Chenab, those are western flowing rivers, they were given to Pakistan. I call it an extension of 1947 border agreement. It's not a river agreement. It's a Border agreement means 3 rivers were given to India, 3 rivers were given to Pakistan. But there is a catch there. The catch is these 3 rivers which are given to Pakistan, they flows through Indian administered Kashmir. Indians call it Kashmir or Jammu and Kashmir. Pakistanis call it Azad Kashmir. Indians calls Pakistan's Kashmir Pakistan occupied Kashmir. Indians call it Indian occupied. But let's put to make the situation, it's an Indian control or Indian administered Kashmir. These rivers flow. So India has the control of the upstream, but the Pakistan is dependent on this water. There is another thing which they kept forgetting. If you look at this, well, the India took away this water for their side, because that is easy, because that's in the mainland, the Punjab side or Himachal Pradesh, they took away the water. But for if you take the Kashmir, the Pakistan side, Pakistan always is apprehensive of the water is under the upstream, which is in the Indian control. And there the situation lies. So the Kashmir becomes extremely important for Pakistan's even the water security, isn't it? Because if the situation goes in, if the Kashmir, which is supposed to be, or Pakistan thinks supposed to be part of Pakistan, then the problem will not be there, because it will be under the control of Pakistan itself. Pakistan doesn't need to worry about it. But the almost two-thirds of the Kashmir Valley, which is in the Indian side, that keeps this water. There have been several, as per these agreements, 1960 agreement, Indians are allowed to make use of the water for hydropower purposes, for some basic irrigation in the Kashmir Valley, local irrigation, very little, but not to create any kind of water reservoirs or high or water infrastructures will create problems for the Pakistan side. So though Pakistanis got more water, even some money from the Indian side, because they were compensated for because the dams were started in the Indian side, so they have to build their dam, 60,000 pound, I think that time, 60 million pound. But the Indians are not allowed to build big storage facilities in the 3 western flowing rivers. And this has created a number of problems, because when the Indians start any project, like it's as a Bagli hydropower project or the Chenab Rivers Kishan Ganga project, whenever Indians starts any hydropower projects, that becomes a point of friction, because the Pakistani thinks because the water will be probably blocked. It's a huge emotional issue. It has become a politically extremely volatile for both India and Pakistan. There has been a number of internal conflicts which is going on in Pakistan and which is going on in India. I will come to that. But what is the key thing here? I think usually both these countries have forgotten. One is, if you look at, if India, the Pakistan major problem is in the Pakistan side is they don't really trust Indians, and rightly so. But there is no trust. There is a huge lack of trust between Pakistan and India, because though the claim in Pakistan side is that the India is taking away the water, or India is building or will build the dams to take away the water of these 3 rivers, India actually cannot take away that water, because these water are in the Kashmir Valley. It goes directly to the Kashmir side, Pakistan side. To take that water to India's mainstream, they have to create a tunnel, probably 100 kilometers tunnel, and that's through a part of Himalayan mountains, Indians have, I think, the largest tunnel they have built now till 10 kilometers. So I don't think that's is possible in the near future. They have to use the nuclear power to do it. Or you need to put some helicopters those who can really, buckets of water to get out of this. That's not possible. But why it is that why Pakistan is so nervous or so apprehensive about Indian projects? Because it is again the military issue. It's a lack of trust. The water is not going anywhere. That everyone knows. Because India cannot take this water. But the issue is that if you have the storage facilities bigger, you can create a lot of nuisance down south for the Pakistan. You can, at the time of the war, you can put the water. Even not at the time of the war, you can really have fun with your adversary. You can, whenever the country is going in the drought season, you will block the water. Whenever the country is going in the flood season, you throw the more water, which Bangladesh is always complaining. So you can easily play that, and that's what Pakistan doesn't trust. And I think it's a huge lack of trust between these two countries, which has gone into this system. Whereas it's actually an agreement, is not an agreement, or it's not a water agreement, it is a boundary agreement. It has nothing more than that, nothing less than that. But this is where the lack of trust is important. What is happening in the Pakistan side? Pakistan has gone into a kind of, Pakistan of course heavily dependent on water. It's a huge population growth taking place, its economy is doing well as well in some extent. So they need more water. The Pakistan's water crisis is terrible. It's getting more and more. But of course there is this water. Pakistan has these problems because Pakistan's most of this Indus water is taken by Punjabis. Punjab province, which is the largest, most powerful province. This has become a major challenge, particularly for the Sindh province, which is in the south, and the other provinces are apprehensive about it. So that's a conflict going on in the Pakistan side. In the Indian side, again the Indian Punjab, okay, they are supposed to take the more water because these 2-3 rivers which go faster. In Indian Punjab, these are the bread baskets of both the country. Punjab East. Should be East, isn't it? Yeah, Indian side, and Punjab West should be Pakistan, because the partition came in, it's the same Punjab. So if you are not actually South Asianist, you see that I'm not lying. This is the same Punjab has been divided in two parts. So this is where the situation is. In the Indian side, they wanted to divert this water from Punjab to other states because there is a separate state got created, Haryana. They also have an idea of diverting to the desert areas in Rajasthan. But that has not taken place because there is a canal has been built to some extent, but a half of the canal it has been stopped. Since it started in 1984, the canal has been stopped. So they are not, this is an internal conflict. What I'm saying is that there is lots of internal conflict going on in the Pakistan side and also Indian side among the different provinces of these two countries who will get more water. So the conflict is not only between India and Pakistan, it's that within the countries also have lots of conflict going on. And then it has gone into quite interesting uses of the 2016, there was an attack on the Indian forces in Kashmir, allegedly by the militants, Kashmiri militants, those who were allegedly supported by coming from the Pakistani originating militants. And in India we have a government now which is highly Hindu nationalist, put it mildly. Okay? A Hindu nationalist government is there. So it started threatening that we will stop the water to Pakistan. Of course, Pakistan got nervous, but no, and the Indian strategic experts and the military guys have no idea how the water works. They say, we will stop the water to Pakistan. I usually participate in the media debates. I said, how? Can you tell me how you want to take this water from Pakistan? The water is not that you can put in your pocket and walk back. This is nothing. It's not a nuclear weapon that you can just put somewhere mount it somewhere and you walk back. It's thousands of cusecs of water every minute flowing. How you divert this water overnight that you will teach a lesson to Pakistan? There is no answer. Still they don't have any answer. It's just just a kind of creating this kind of war hysteria, and this keeps both the countries busy. But the Pakistani politicians, they keep it busy that the Indians will stop it. Indian politicians make this kind of a game all the time that we will stop it. So there is a game going on, to be honest. This time, there is another complication has come in. What has happened, let me go back to this. If you see, if you look at it, there is it's not only the river is not shared between India and Pakistan, it's also Afghanistan has two major tributaries coming from Afghanistan side and coming to Pakistan side. And these two, particularly the Kabul River, which Kabul and Kunar, but the Kabul is important, Kabul River. There are 12 dam projects have been planned now in the Afghanistan side. And the fun is the Indians are involved with the US aid. If you know about that part of the world, there is a game going on in Afghanistan in proxy war game between India and Pakistan. So if Indians are building the 12 dams in the Kabul River, that of course keeps the Pakistanis tense. Of course, whether the dam they will build or not, that's a different thing, but that's a project discussions going on. But the Pakistanis and Afghanistan are not getting into agreement on that how to divide this water. So while the Indians are involved, there is another actor has come in, which is China. You look at those rivers, the Indus River has also originated from China. And there is a Satluj River, the top, the thick one, and there is the lowest one. That's also Satluj one, which has given to India, that also comes from China. And China has already started building a small dam on the Indus system. I mean, of course, the story goes on into different parts that China has built big dams. It's actually a small dam China has built. But China still has the control of the main stream of the Indus. If China wants to make fun there, then Indians are worried. So it's a game going on. While the Indians are trying to play the game in Afghanistan, the China and Pakistan has a good relationship, and China still has the control over the town. I will come back to China later on, but this is where the situation lies on the Indus system. I think I did it, this one? No. The Ganges, Brahmaputra, these are the two basins which will be, and these basins, look, because the Brahmaputra and Ganges, which is the heirloom in the China, they joined together in the Bangladesh just before getting into the Bay of Bengal. If you asked an Indian researcher, water researchers, they will always put the Brahmaputra together with the Ganges. And it has a reason behind it. I will come to that why. But these are two very different basins. Okay, the Ganges basin is different than the Brahmaputra basin. But the Ganges basin is India, Nepal, then Bangladesh, where the Brahmaputra basin is China, India, Bangladesh, and Bhutan. And Burma, similarly, like Burma has a little bit, but that's small, very small. What has happened? Let's focus on this. India is a majority Hindu country. Almost 80% of the population of India is Hindu. India has a large chunk of minority, which is 14 to 15% Muslims. India being a Hindu country and Indian Hindu religion the Ganges River has a huge importance for the Hindu religion. It is all kinds of gods, all sorts of religious places considered. Ganges River is called the mother particular in the North Indian mythology, North Indian philosophy. So this has been a part of and the Ganges is supposed to come from the Shiva's, the god Lord Shiva's commandal or whatever. And then, so Indians think Ganges is their river. But the Ganges River, the major water comes from the Nepal side, and the Bangladesh, 1/3 of Bangladesh is dependent on the Ganges River, which they call Pabba. But the Indians, in mentality, they don't consider it as an international river. It's considered as an Indian river, and it goes through the dominant Hindu culture, which we have inherited and which always been part of our discourse. So what had happened? Look, what happened when the Ganges coming there, most of the tributaries coming from Nepal side, and the Ganges, Jamuna flowing in the middle of the Hindi heartland. And before Ganges reaches Bangladesh, what India did in the 1960s, started building a canal to divert the water in the dry season. We all know that Bangladesh has plenty of water. We see the flood picture, but that is only 2 months in a year. But the rest of the time, Bangladesh is water scarce. So India has built a Farak barrage on the Ganges River, 35 kilometers just outside distance of Bangladesh, to divert most 40,000 cusecs. At that time, the total flow was 55,000 cusecs, to divert 40,000 cusecs to the Indian side. The argument was to keep the Calcutta port. Calcutta port is the Hooghly River, which is the distributor here, to divert the most of the water there. And that became a serious issue between India and Bangladesh, because Bangladesh is diverting so much India is diverting this much of water. So they started keep on conflict, but particularly Bangladesh was not that time. Bangladesh, if you remember, it was East Pakistan. So there are lots of politics was going on, while the Indian side, the agreement on the Indus side with the West Pakistan side, Indians refused to sign with the East Pakistan side, which is the Ganges. And the argument goes in that Indians were trying to show that the West Pakistan, which was real in power, doesn't really take your interest into account. So whatever it happened, in 1975, Bangladesh became independent in 1971. The barrage started becoming operative in 1975. Even that was when the barrage, that time the founding president of the Bangladesh, when he gave the permission to the barrage to be, agreement to barrage to work, he was killed after in a coup. So that has become a major tension. This is Farakka barrage, which I mentioned before. It used to be considered as one of the major issues of India-Bangladesh relationship. And I was telling you, for 3 years, I was looking at we all not talk about the climate refugees. I started my work looking at the environmental refugees in that, the Farakka issue. I was looking at the areas in Bangladesh, which is this part, southwestern part of Bangladesh, Khulna, Rajshahi, this area. Because this is the area which has been mostly affected because of the water diversion. Bangladesh has been always complaining, but what the people are doing, in that area. So, if people are affected, the people must be survival technique. So that was the issue. That's what I was looking at it. What they do, Indians always complain that the Bangladeshis are migrating to India. okay? And they don't talk about the water issue. Whereas the Bangladeshis always complain Indians taking out the water, but they refuse that the Bangladeshis are migrating to India. So when I try to find out, and even 3 years, did a study, did all the, all kinds of statistical calculations with all sorts of interviews, 2 million at least have migrated from that area by displaced by Indian own fault to Indian side. So of course, when my research was neither liked by Indians nor by Bangladeshis, because the first part, Indians don't like it because they don't claim that the Ganges is creating this problem, but they always love the second part because the Bangladeshis are coming. Whereas the Bangladeshis don't like my second part, but they like my first part. Be liked by this political authority. We have to like to tell the truth, and this is what has been the major issue. Major issue is the lack of, again, the trust. But of course, Bangladesh is not exactly like Pakistan. I still remember. I still remember in 1973 or 1993 or 94. No, 1973. I was quite small. 1993 or 94. I interviewed the water secretary of water affairs in Bangladesh. Of course, I was a Swedish researcher, but of course he saw me as an Indian all the time. And so he told me, look, if what you are doing with us means what Indians are doing with Bangladesh is, if Indians do with the Pakistanis will send missiles and destroy that. So of course, the military parity wise, Pakistan is much more in a position to be a threat to Indian doing this kind of activities. You can't, it will be impossible for India to put a barrage like this in the Pakistan side and divert the water without Pakistan's consent. Whereas they can do it with the Bangladesh. This also comes with the military power and how much of power nuisance you do have. So it's a power nuisance wise, Pakistanis match Indians, whereas the Bangladeshis don't match Indians. And I think that's what has happened there. I think I told you there is a decreased dry season flow, which will make it difficult because, of course, there is a going on because of the increased melting of the glaciers, but that will not last long. The agreements they have signed in 96, the 30 years agreement will be re-signed again in 80 years. We don't know how that will take place because this brings into, because when they signed the 96 agreement, climate change was not part of it. Climate change is a serious issue in Bangladesh. It's becoming a huge issue in Bangladesh with the sea level rise, with the lots of other impacts, both on the, particularly survival areas. But then there is another plan. The Indians plan to divert the Brahmaputra river. Okay, let's move the Brahmaputra river. Brahmaputra river, as I said, is flowing through the China side, half of the distance. It comes through the Indian side little bit, then it goes down to Bangladesh, where the dry season flow of Ganges river is 55,000 cusecs approximately. The Brahmaputra water flow in the dry season is around double 100,000 cusecs. But these waters, Indians don't able to use it, or China doesn't use it, Indians don't able to use it. So it goes Bangladesh. Of course, for them, the going water to the sea is a wastage of water. So 100,000 cusecs of water, they think that's being wasted because it's going directly flowing to the sea. Indians have a grand plan for ages. These areas are dry areas, these areas. Indians have planned that to link their rivers. Okay, these are mostly highly monsoon time, so they don't have this water in the summertime. So the Indians have called the river linking project to link most of the main rivers. But the real key to that project is to divert the Brahmaputra water. if they can divert that 100,000 cubics of water, that will be only additional water they can bring from outside. And they have to, of course, create situations in Nepal to store more water. But the Brahmaputra Water is the key. 1978, Indians have given a proposal to Bangladesh that to create a link canal from here to connect the water and to flow this water from the Brahmaputra to Ganges. Of course, Bangladesh will never like it or never accept it, because it will create another river in the Bangladesh on the top of the north. And then another problem is why Bangladesh will give its water to India. I mean, what is the point? And this is the grand plan which Indians have it now. In this context, there are a few things which is happening. And because I think I'm talking too much, so let me go a little faster. When the river flows through China side, Chinese were never party to it. China, the water was coming through this, China was not doing anything, it was in the Tibetan side, the area was not developed, China was not interested in this. But China has started building dams. The 5 dams, or at least 1 dam has been in operations in 2014, there are 4 dams are being planned. So this, China has started building dams. But these are all hydropower dams, remember. Of course, China has also a grand plan. China has also succeeded to some extent to diverting the water from south to north. You know, the south-north pipeline. But that's the only central line has worked. There is always this high lack of trust in the Indian side that the Chinese are planning to divert the water to the Beijing side, Beijing-Tianjin side, from the this kind of water lake. I'll give you one example. Few months back, the water system in the Brahmaputra, Indian side of Brahmaputra, started looking blacker, darker. There is a huge media hue and cry in India that the Chinese have started diverting our water. These idiots forgot to understand that you don't divert the water. I mean, the problem is this, the lack of understanding how the water really works, water management works. If China has to plan this water diversion, it has to build a big dam in the Big Bend when the river totally comes a U-turn almost and then goes into Indian side. It has to build a big dam. Of course, China has a plan, but China doesn't have that plan in the last 5 years plan. China has a grand plan. China has to probably have built either underground canal or connecting canal almost 500 kilometers to divert the water to the system from the Brahmaputra system to this. And China has a maximum tunnel it has built till now, probably 17 or 18 kilometers, not more than that. But the Indian side, there is a huge, and they didn't understand that this is what actually, even if China wants to divert the water, I mean, just take for the argument's sake, okay? If you are not even a water engineer, you start a construction of diverting the water from 500 kilometers. Why you start digging the canal from the riverside? I mean, how that makes sense? Do you want, I mean, you construct the canal in the dry area, then you open the river when the canal is open. You don't start making a canal which is the riverside. There are different theories. A theory is either the Indians have started building roads in the areas in the upstream, which the military has building roads which they don't want to tell the press. The other theory is there is probably Chinese who are trying to build what you call for the hydropower canal, for hydropower dams which they are building. There is another canal which they are building, but this is just for the hydropower, not to divert. But this becomes a major issue. But the real issue is when in 2016, Indians were threatening Pakistan that we will divert your water from the Indus. China took that time to start filling that dam in the Brahmaputra side. Did you get the picture? Because if China told them, look, if you make a mess there, we also control the water here. So China has started playing a very active role, or increasingly an active role in the basin in the upstream, which was not the case. Same time, India has also, flood is bringing attention, but now India and China have some kind of agreement. India pays money, China pays the river data, river flow data, so this time they can get at least advanced information when the flood is coming. But there is a deteriorating India's relationship with Nepal. Nepal used to be the Indian friend or control, or India was to be the Nepal's big brother. China was never interfering or very rarely interfering in the India-Nepal relationship. It's not anymore. In Nepal, now a government, which is communist government, which is much more closer to Chinese are not communist, but I'm just but the Nepalese communist government is more closer to China than now to India. And it's no one to be blamed except India, to be honest. Because when the present government in India came to power in 2014, in 2015 when this Prime Minister went to Nepal, he got a huge welcome in Nepal. Nepal is supposed to be previously was a Hindu kingdom. Now it has become a secular country, but 90% of the Hindus. So this guy is supposed to be the Indian Prime Minister, supposed to be a Hindu nationalist. So it got a lot of support there. After a few months, this nationalist Prime Minister of India made the blockade. For several months, the Nepalese didn't get in because all these. Because Nepal is a landlocked country, so all these things got to go through the river sources of the Indian, Calcutta port. They use it to bring the things from outside, and then it gets transported through the land in Indian side to go to Nepal. So Nepal realized they can trust India. That Nepal, and that time in China has the Indians have done that before. But that time China didn't have that power or not interest to get engaged. But China is not anymore the same China what it used to be in the 1980s or 1960s. China is much more powerful, much more forceful. China wants to play a very serious role. What they did, when the Indians were blocking, China said, look, we will do it. China has started constructing railway tracks. And so there is a now 5 Chinese ports are going to be used even to transport the land, the materials imports for the Nepal within the China. And though Indian distance is less, but Indian bureaucracy is so slow and Indian road system is so bad, Chinese will be covering 2.5 times more distance, but their supplies will come in half the time than the Indians are taking. So you can imagine, so Chinese efficiency will take over. So what is happening now, India is losing its interest, India is losing its emphasis or importance in Nepal. So Nepal is getting into China. And that's what, coming back to our topic, because Indians have built a number of dams in Nepal before, Indians have always built these dams in Nepal, created it for the flood control in the Indian side, use the water for irrigation, but they have not paid the money properly. They have taken their land, they only want to pay in the rupee, they don't, because Nepal of course only want to pay on the cost side, Nepal wants to get the cost and the benefit side, so they have been, because they have been, since 1940s they have been misbehaving with Nepal in many ways. But Nepal doesn't want to accept it anymore. But of course there is a big tussle going on in Nepal, who will take the control. But what is happening, China is taking over in Nepal quite a lot. The India's relations with Bhutan, Bhutan is the only country where the Brahmaputra basin comes in. India is the only country, Bhutan is the only country where India has some good relationship. Because Bhutan's foreign policy and the security policy was virtually controlled by India. But And Indians have built a number of hydropower projects in Bhutan. Of course, it's a much better way than what they used to do in Nepal. So they are building the hydropower in Nepal, in Bhutan, and getting the hydropower to India. But that is creating a problem. Do you want me to stop?
5 minutes.
Yeah, sorry, I will finish it. The problem is that we don't stop. So, never tell me to speak for as long as I can. Then you just give me 20 minutes, I will deliver it. Not, if you give me a free hand, then I go on.
I give you 5 more.
Okay, fine. Okay, I will finish. So the Bhutan, Indians have built several dams in Bhutan side, but the Bhutan is becoming democratic. And it's easy to control a country when it's non-democratic. We know that, isn't it? When West has been involved in Africa or anywhere, it's always easy to control from outside when it's a non-democratic. Once they start democratic, it becomes a problem. Because there is a section in Bhutan has started saying why Indians are making these environmental issues. I mean, whether they are paying money or not, how much these projects are being cost for the country, environmentally, and all these things. More than that, China has said that we will give you $10 billion. $10 billion for 400,000 population in Bhutan, India cannot match. So India is also losing interest in the Bhutan side. So to move quickly, there is a changing geopolitics. It's not only changing climate, because the climate change has affected the water flow, water agreements, water variation, but it's a changing politics. China, which was never an actor in the South Asian water politics, has emerged as a serious actor. And that has taken out India used to be the hydro hegemon in the South Asia. India used to dictate what the water politics will be, but not India is unable to do it anymore. And this is where it's like China has created this challenge to the Western domination in Africa. China has similarly created the challenge for the Indian domination in the South Asia in all these water agreements. I'm talking about mostly now in water agreements. I'm not moving into the larger areas. Okay, so the water agreements, China has this issue. And with China, this is somehow, I think, it's a new possibility. We might say it's something's happening. It goes out of beyond our control, or doesn't work the way we had planned or we had been investing. But by China coming, we don't really think of maintaining the business as usual approach, because Indians have not been fair in the water, as I was mentioning, in the water, giving the water to their smaller neighbors. And now Indians are realizing how it feels to be, not to be hydro-hegemon. That you are under the control or on the mercy of another bigger power, which will now dictate the story. I think it's an interesting development. It's an interesting development which might be able to generate the possibilities and opportunities for the countries to come together. That's what I think, because otherwise it was going on. Look, we are in control. We'll continue to do so. So if there is always a threat which is looming, the other parties join hands, and I think that is an important thing. The South Asians need to join hands. Climate geopolitical change is kind of both good and bad for water sharing. As I said, new disputes will emerge, but we need how to experience how to manage this variable vulnerability. There is existing agreements, they are likely to come under threat, but they will need to be revised. They need to be seen. The 1996 agreement has to be revised. The 2000 between India and Bangladesh on the Ganges. 1960 agreement, it has outlived its utility. It is an agreement. As I say, it's a partition agreement. If you want to make these two countries really work together, you have to sign a new agreement, particularly to meet the climate change. So it's a number of uncertainties, but there is an opportunity for, this is the last one. This is the opportunities for the cooperation. So as I mentioned, India has to accept that it is not anymore the hegemon. It needs to bring the lower basin countries together if it wants to bargain well, but in a position of strength with China. You can't really deal with this issue with the diplomats only. They don't understand this water at all. Or this so-called strategic expert, they have no idea how this water works. I have a long story to tell, but I don't have time now, but I can tell you they're absolutely useless in that part of the world to see how the water can be a foreign policy instrument. Engagement at the highest political level. Look, nothing will happen. You can talk to hundreds, all these water ministers, whatever, unless you catch the guy on the top, who is a man or woman, doesn't matter. You catch that, or military guy or Democrat or authoritarian or communist, whatever, who is the top, because the water is an extremely important issue not to be dealt by any minister or any leader than the main guy itself. So we need a comprehensive strategy to do the water sharing in the context of climate change and the changing. It's a climate change, not only changing, China has come in. So climate change and China, the South Asia needs, they're not together, okay? So don't confuse. I'm saying that both of them also provide challenges and both of them provide opportunities. Yeah, I just want to, for Lund, I need to show you that I come from that place, okay? Thank you. So I'm sorry I just went on.
Thank you so much for such an exciting and enlightening talk. I'm so sorry I had to cut you short because of this. I will quickly take some questions. Do we have questions? Of course we have, right?
Hello, Ashok. Regarding this politics and things, we know the South Asian countries we are facing about the climate change, heavy intensive rainfall recently. And are there any weather modification systems involved in these countries? I mean, the changing rainfall into.
Yep, I mean, there has been a number of discussions, what are taking place, what is not. Of course, there has been always a doubt that whether it is because of the climate change. Like take, for example, recent flood in Kerala, which you probably mentioned. The flood in Kerala, which has been unprecedented. Many people started saying, and these floods are getting common and more common. But if you look at it, 100 years, almost 97 years back, the similar type of rainfall had taken at that point of time. Of course, that not, the devastation was not to that level, but it was whether it is just a freak incident, like what it used to be at that point of time. If it happened 97 years, that time the climate change was not there, or that time. But then we are now getting it here, why now? So there is the discussions going on whether this is exactly because of that. But of course, look, there are several issues of the climate change in this region. Climate change wise, particularly this country, if you look at it, there is lots of reports have come in, country like Bangladesh, hundreds of reports on how to do the climate change. Lots of people like me, those who are the consultant, work as consultant sometimes. I mean, I was a few years back, I was trying to make a list of how many reports on the climate change and sea level rise and impact on Bangladesh. It was 114 something. Out of 114, I think 100 were from UK. So you can imagine how much of work. Then you look at Nepal, it's a very little was working on the climate change issue because they were busy with the other things, the conflict and then the peacebuilding process of the climate change. Now the climate change has come into focus on the. In the Indian side, there have been few reports, but the kind of things what India actually intends to do and what India is doing is very different. Let me tell you the difference between India and China, because there has been a lot of wish from the West, particularly from Europe, when the Trump moved out of Paris Agreement, that the India and China will fill in, okay? It's absolutely absurd. First of all, China doesn't have that kind of leadership or the moral leadership which US or the US could provide. But that's a different thing. What China is doing exactly what we do in this part of the world. China is cleaning up the country, but China is polluting other countries. Okay, so like take for example Salween River, the river which I was Han in China and Salween in Burma. China had a lot of dam projects in the Han upstream. China has stopped it. Whereas China forcing the Burma to build the dams, which Chinese companies will build the dams in the Salween in the Burma. Because we have kept the clean and we are trying to bring the things from outside, and that's what China is doing exactly the same thing, but China has reached the resource. Indians are bluffing. Why it's bluffing? Indians have committed, I remember when the Trump, again I started talking, when the Trump said he's withdrawing, that day Modi, the Indian Prime Minister, was with Macron in French president. He said India will move few steps more than what we have committed. India hasn't moved, rather gone backward. Collected a lot of resources. India is putting money on the creating more coal-fired power station. All these things, a story goes on, but to put it shortly, in one sentence, it's just that we are saying that we are doing it and we are not doing anything. We are just moving it. So we don't have resources that much, and neither we have to divert the resources for the immediate. So Indians are playing a very bluffing game, whereas Chinese are playing the same game what the Americans and the Europeans have done before. So in some way, and climate change issue, if you want to look at the South Asia, you need a regional cooperation. A SAARC is completely devastated. We recently wrote a piece that without the cooperation between Pakistan, Bangladesh, Nepal, Bhutan, and India, forget China for the time being, India needs these countries at least, particularly Nepal and Bhutan, to look at this. Nothing. Indians have been the main reason behind not SAARC working at all, just because of they want to isolate Pakistan. Is that the way you look at the climate change issue? So this is something. It's a climate change. Of course, there is a different debate whether but to look at the kind of intensity and the number of natural disasters, the floods, have come in the Indian side. So of course there are instances it was to be done, it was being done before, it had happened before, but the number of times it is happening now, it is absolutely a kind of real challenge for how this will work. So but we are not prepared, nor we are not thinking of being prepared.
Yeah, I have to mention that these days I'm from Sri Lanka and we are experiencing severe rains these couple of 2-3 days, and it's around only 2-3 days, more than 350 millimeter rainfall. It's the half than the annual rainfall of Sweden actually. So more than half of the country now in the high risk of flooding. Yeah, it's devastating that this is happening. So
even Kerala even now got into a cyclone again. Now what do you call it, the typhoon or whatever? They now call it cyclone. Yeah. Kerala had never gone through that kind of cyclone in the side. These are the things happening. But the climate change issue, this is somehow you can probably find a way out somehow to try to. There will be some deniers all the time, but it's a serious issue already. But unfortunately, none of these countries in South Asia or anything have really committed anything to do anything concrete. Of course, they have written a lot of policy papers, but nothing happening on the ground. So you had some questions with me.
Yeah, I just wanted to ask that, like you said that, is it already time to say that Nepal is being closer to China? Like, there are a lot of issues that it's going on in Nepal and India. So, just for example, like there was a big earthquake in 2015 in Nepal, and then there is one highway connecting China and Nepal. still that highway hasn't been repaired and that is not in action now. So there are a lot of like things to fix before like.
Sure. No, I mean, of course, if I speak about the China-Nepal, that will be another 2 hours. But I went to that highway after the earthquake. I was going in a Maruti, Indian Maruti. It was a terrible situation. I had with my, Florian was with me. So he's a big German guy. So we are really cramped, but we managed to reach there. Anyway, but China has already started building the constructions there. China has already done a recce of moving the things. I think in the beginning of, I think in the March or April, they did it, that how to move things from there. Indians are claiming that they will now give water, because when China said, look, we are taking the train, they have already done this survey, China, and once China is interested, things move much faster. I will give one example. When Modi, Indian Prime Minister, went to Nepal, there are 2 police groups there in Nepal. They always compete among themselves. One is royal police, another is the local police. When the Modi went to Nepal, he said, I will create a infrastructure for this police headquarters. India will build it. When G came to Nepal, G said, I will build a headquarters for the other police. China built that headquarters within a year. Indian headquarters hasn't started yet. And it is 4 years has gone. So this is the problem. The Indians have promised a lot, but they, in India, we have it's not a new problem. I've been following the Nepal issue for a long period of time. It's not the Modi problem. It's a problem has gone in for a long period of time. Because Indians never thought that the China will ever become such a superpower in such a short period of time, and China will ever have interest and will be a threat to India in the Nepal. And I think that's what they have been trying to, because I don't have time now to get into it, but I was talking to a person, Indian diplomat. I was having a long discussion with him. I said, why you are doing this? Even before Modi came to power. I said, why you are doing it? The answer is, we want to test how much they are with us and how much they are with China. The test has gone so many times that they have gone quite close to China now. So this is unbelievable things that are happening in the sense, which was never, when I was a kid, I was growing up, I would never expected that Nepal will have that kind of possibility to go. So it's a major serious crisis in the Indians are facing, not only in Nepal, I said Bhutan, in Bangladesh is the only thing where there is the democracy is precarious, the Maldives, you name it, that's what, and they have invited trouble in the neighborhood because they had never thought that they will be threatened by China so soon, so fast.
You have any more questions?
Time for the lunch, they're probably hungry.
Okay, I have one question.
Yes, sir.
So as you talked about the agreements, and that not necessarily the agreements bring in peace or cooperations, and so of course, and with 2 hours of talk, we understood that there has been a lot of conflict of interest, and which doesn't always go with the agreements, and that India hasn't been very proactive in making things done. So what can be the confidence building measures, like immediate measures that India can take in order to fix certain things that are devastated already?
Excellent question. I wish I had a very good answer to it. There is a change of attitude by India to some extent in the region. The way India has started to behave with Nepal and Bangladesh of late, and Bhutan too also, but still the mindset is there, it hasn't changed much. And so there is an improvement in the way, but I think India needs to get over its obsession of keeping Pakistan out. Whether you like it or not, Pakistan is the part of your neighbor, Pakistan is part of the region. So India is too obsessed of keeping Pakistan out. For that, India is absolutely destroyed the SARC. is trying to create a BIMSTEC, which is the Bangladesh, Nepal, Bhutan, that side. But that is also forgets that is Nepal refused to send the people there, there for the exercise because China still controls the situation. There are few problems. China, India, I sincerely believe India shouldn't have boycotted BRF, Belt Road Program or project or forum, because that was a serious mistake. India is the only country, and poor Bhutan was forced to be with India. None of the countries sided with it. India has to start working with China on the BRF. India has done a mistake of signing the agreement, the Lemo agreement with the US, which is terrible decisions to do it. But they can at least go collaborate with China on that front, which will really help the matter. But at the same time, there is you need to accept the fact that Pakistan is not a neighbor and not a small country that you can probably able to isolate it. So that's what is creating problem in the South Asian regional. India has only possibility of overcoming this challenge is I think to build a regional collaborations. It's not totally gone, but you can probably work hard a little more. But I think that's the only way you will be able to get a good equal footing to not only in the water issue is extremely important, but also in all the regional issues. You name it in the pollutions, you name it. You can't keep on when the whole of North India was under the dark cloud for a few weeks for the pollutions cloud. You can't keep on blaming Pakistan or Dubai for that. You have to find a way out how to work out to work this together. So I think it's a somehow, I don't have a quick answer, but I think India needs to work together to create these three things, China, Pakistan, and also South Asian countries together. Unless they join the hands, it's impossible to do it.
I was just thinking the same, because we can't alienate, so we have to stop alienating Pakistan and Bangladesh, and for that we need to let go of our Hindu nationalist government first.
But that's politicians will decide. But that's not, I'm not getting into that. If you bring me into that topic, that might take me somewhere. There will be election though, so hopefully. Thank you.
Thank you so much. I think we are done for the day, and thank you so much for coming in.
Thank you very much.